Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Monday, January the 15th of 2024 council meeting. We will be starting at 7:02 p.m. And just a special thanks we actually have people in the audience today in the chambers. So thank you to those who came out in person. I will now call our meeting to order. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. For a moment of reflection, I did want to note that today is known as Blue Monday, and in acknowledgement of that, I wanted to highlight the new 988 suicide prevention phone line. And so recently I received a letter, a request actually from Member of Parliament Todd Doherty for Caribou Prince George, and he asked that the township help promote the new Cross Canada Suicide Crisis phone line. So it is a 3-number, very similar to 911 or 211, but it is 988, and that can be reached by phone or text. And this was inspired by a Member of Parliament, Doherty, who lost his best friend to suicide at age 14. So this motion did pass at our federal Parliament, and I just want to take a moment to recognize that over 4,500 people die each year in Canada as a result to suicide. And suicide is the second leading cause of death among those who are aged 15 to 34 in Canada. So if we could just have a moment of silence for them. Thank you very much. And so just to sum that up, if you are in crisis, please do reach out to 988 to receive the correct services. And if you aren't in crisis but need mental health supports, our Wilmot Family Resource Centre and Interfaith Counselling are two really great places to start in the community. As for the territorial land acknowledgement, we have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community. We do have a few additions to the agenda. Item 7 for delegations. On item 10.1, we do have Jeff Van Geisel, and item 12.2, we have Glenn Mathers. In item 8 for correspondence, we have 3 new correspondence that were circulated to council prior to the meeting. You will be able to find those on the updated, or I guess on the minutes from this meeting, sorry. And item 10.1 for draft 2024 operating utility and capital budget. Attachment number 2, there has been a replacement of page 129 and an addition of 129A, which is a new insert, and an addition of 129B, which is a new insert, which will also be circulated in the minutes from this meeting. With all of those additions, may I please have an adoption of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest, councillors? Seeing none, I will now minutes from previous meetings, and the recommendation is that the minutes from the December 11th regular meeting and the December 18th special council meeting be adopted as presented. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And I already noted that we did have the delegates. We will come to you when we get to those points in the agenda. We'll call you up respectively. And correspondence, in addition to the ones that were added, we have some additional correspondence that again was circulated to council. Did anybody have questions or comments? We'll go to Councillor Martin and then Councillor Wilkinson.
I would like to bring forward the correspondence regarding the Schneider lands, which Interim Director Bunn had brought to our attention.
Most certainly. Did you have a specific question for?
Shall I ask that now?
Yep, you can
Okay,
ask.
Thank you. So my question is to Director Okrafka and possibly Director Mullenhouse regarding the status. I've had quite a bit of correspondence lately asking questions about the donation of the Schneider lands by the Schneider family, and we've brought it before council before. I recognize that there are concerns about parking, liability, safety. I was just wondering, what is the status of that issue?
Through you, Mayor Salomon, to Councillor Martin. Staff are continuing to work with our partners at the City of Waterloo. It is a boundary road that runs along the portion of the property. Meetings are occurring later this week as well. And at such time as we have a collective response to address those issues that you raised, being safety of the road, parking, access, those matters, we will be returning to council with a report and a recommendation, but it would be not practical to bring back a report and a recommendation without having the answers to the questions previously raised by council.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And just to say, I appreciate your work. I know some people are raising questions, making it seem as if we're not interested or we're not doing a good job. I appreciate the hard work that you are doing on that to try to find an amenable solution.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, I simply wish to speak to the correspondence from a few different individuals and groups regarding the meeting we had regarding ROPA 6 and the letter back to Minister Calandra, in particular surrounding the topic of anhydrous ammonia and the setbacks in the letter from the Nature's Alpine legal team. So just want to share some of the research so that it's out there in the public realm, and I can at least explain some of the reasoning why it is appropriate to designate or ask for that land next to that area to be designated. And I certainly appreciate the concerns of citizens and regarding safety. I think it's important that we talk about safety for everyone in the community, especially when we're dealing with chemicals and compounds. But to start, I will say that anhydrous ammonia it's a liquid stored under pressure. It is at that facility and it's used in a variety of applications in our township. It's a fertilizer used by farmers, provides a lot of nitrogen to crops. It's also used as a refrigerant and quite common to be found in ice rinks and recreation facilities, as well as larger industrial refrigeration systems to help create the conditions in order to refrigerate or create ice. So based on the regulations set by the Government of Canada, and I'm happy to share this information with anybody that was curious to review the link, there is a minimum setback between 50 to 300 feet when the storage of anhydrous ammonia is on a site, and there's a variety of reasons why it might be 50 feet or 300 feet. But I would point out that section 15.3, 15.5, 15.6, and 18.3 also lay out this information. But just to quote here quickly, it is recommended that the distance of storage tanks with water capacities exceeding 2,000 imperial gallons when located near schools, hospitals, theaters, residential areas, or other similar places of a public assembly be not less than 300 feet. So the Government of Canada has already set out what the regulations are, and we're certainly well within that when we were looking at this land designation. And I would encourage the public to also use Google Maps and look at some of the distances you can measure yourself. The correspondence made reference to a explosion that took place tragically in West Texas as well as North Carolina. But I would suggest that those are completely different circumstances. They were using and storing ammonium nitrate, which is a different compound altogether. Ammonium nitrate, unfortunately, was also used in the tragic Oklahoma City bombings in the 90s, and that does carry explosive properties. Based on the research and the conversations I have, that's not the material that's being stored on this site. So there is no quote unquote 1.5 kilometer blast radius. And if there was, I would have other concerns because the current distances from that facility at present are 850 meters to Captain McCullum, 1.07 kilometers to Lashinger, 711 meters to the nearest residence, and 1.04 kilometers to WO, and 542 meters to the rec center. So Certainly, if there was ammonia nitrate and risks associated with a, again, 1.5 kilometer blast radius, there would be a lot of people within that area that should have major concerns. But we're talking about anhydrous ammonia being stored at this site. So, in conclusion, I just want to say there's no immediate danger, and proceeding forward with this official plan or these preferences to the official plan, we'll be able to control these pieces and the setbacks from where the facilities or the houses will be through our secondary plan as well. Some of the preliminary drawings would show that they're going to far exceed what the Government of Canada required setbacks are. So just to address that with a very long-winded answer full of hopefully information for folks to take home, there is no immediate risk, but I do appreciate citizens' concern for public safety in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Any other questions or comments of correspondence? Councillor Cressman.
As a farmer, I've used anhydrous ammonia in my younger days, and if you smell it, you'll know it. It opens your nasal passages pretty quickly, and so I think Alpine's part of their concern goes back to the former facility in New Hamburg, where it was in the news about complaints of odor and vapors from that. And I'm sure part of their concern is they don't want deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra used to say, because basically people, it can be something that is an irritant if it's released in large quantities. I use their product on my farm. I've hauled a mixture of lime and anhydrous ammonia, the residue out of there over time, and used it on my farm. So I'm cognizant of what, to a degree, what goes on there. Certainly that was a few years ago. But I think their concern is they moved once, they don't want to be forced to move again. And I think that's the tone of the letter that I read in terms from their legal team.
Thank you, Councillor Cressman. Any other comments or questions on correspondence, councillors? Okay, seeing none. The consent agenda only has one item, which is actually quite exciting, and that's the completion of the Nith River Promenade project. To get this on the floor, may I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin. Does anybody want to remove this item before we vote on it? I forgot to ask. Okay, seeing no comments, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And on to our reports. So we have 10.1, which is the draft 2024 operating utility and capital budget, COR 2024-01. The recommendation is that report COR 2024-01 draft 2024 operating utility and capital budgets be received and immediately referred to Finance and Budget Committee for detailed review and recommendations to Council. To get this on the floor, may I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. And just quickly before I introduce our interim treasurer, I do want to note, because I got a few emails confused that tonight we were deciding our final budget. That is not tonight. This report is for information tonight, and it's going to be going to Finance and Budget Committee, which is made up of Council, at which point we will then discuss and actually get into the meat and details of the budget and what Council wants to look at there. So just to clarify for anyone watching that we are not making any final budget decisions tonight. This is for information, and with that, I will invite our interim treasurer and chief financial officer, Dan Elliott, to introduce the report. You can jump.
Oh, thank you. And before Mr. Elliott gives his presentation, I thought I would just give a brief introduction. So good evening, Mayor and members of Council and senior staff and members of the public who are watching. I'm pleased to bring you the Township of Wilmot's draft 2024 budget. The budget package includes funding to effectively manage the day-to-day operations of the township, maintaining existing service levels while making key infrastructure investments that will enable the township to grow. In 2024, we'll continue to focus on internal operations and systems improvements, attracting and retaining talented and forward-thinking staff to expand our capacity, plan for substantial growth, improve service delivery, and deliver upon the strategic priorities as established by Council. There are many exciting development projects in the planning stages which will bring more diverse employment and business opportunities, as well as a variety of housing options. While we have significant opportunity ahead, at the same time, we're facing a number of challenges and external pressures, including a high rate of inflation, reduction in provincial funding, increased demands for services, and historical underfunding of infrastructure that has depleted the township's reserves. During his presentation this evening, Interim Township Treasurer and CFO Dan Elliott will discuss the proposed strategy to begin building the township's financial reserves to ensure that we're in a position to renew and replace the township's infrastructure. Finally, I'd like to thank all staff who've worked to develop the 2024 draft budget. There's a significant amount of work that goes into compiling the budget, and I want to acknowledge Interim Treasurer Dan Elliott for coming in. As you know, we are going through staff transition, and he was able to come in on the fly, quickly get up to speed, and assist us in getting the budget package before you this evening. And I also thank Council for your input. From the 2023 budget, we've tried to make improvements to the 2024 budget, acknowledging that we are in transition and we are committing as we go forward in subsequent years to continuously improve the process to meet both your needs and the public's needs. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Sharon. And before I get started, I want to thank my colleagues on the senior leadership team. And I'm going to highlight on a slide some of the evidence that these guys have been working hard. It's not easy to put together a budget in a very challenging year. And they've assisted. I'd like to think that we're doing our part to help with some of the challenges, and I'll highlight that to you in my short presentation. I only have about 17 slides here tonight, and I'm going to speak quickly because we're not here to debate or discuss per se, but rather introduce this not just for yourselves, but for members of the public who are watching here in the House or at their homes online. So let me just get right into things. Some of these slides may look familiar. I got to turn this on. Oh no, not our technology. There we go. One of the things that we did, and I presented some of these slides in December, is we created a set of comparators of other municipalities in the area, and that's all of the municipalities here in Waterloo at the lower tier, and those in the counties that border us that have a population plus or minus about 40 or 50% of ourselves. And so this was based on the BMA municipal comparator study, and it's all rooted from 2022 data. We haven't got the 23 report yet. So we can see in this slide that back in 2022, the average household income in Wilmot was relatively strong in our comparator group. And that's a good thing. We know that. We've got hardworking residents here in town and in the township, and that's indicative of a strong local economy. When we look at our residential tax rates, we can see that we're on the other end of this. Some of our neighboring municipalities have been progressive in advancing their tax rates, addressing their financial issues that they need to. And you can see that Wilmot is lagging a little behind. And this is my observation coming in from outside. I'm the messenger, but that's what I'm being paid to do, is convey to you some of those tough messages. And this one here appears to show that we have been over many, many years a little reluctant to increase our taxes when we ought to be. The total tax bill, when we don't increase our tax rates, here's our comparable taxes on residential. Now these are total taxes on the bill, so this includes the region and the school board share. But the region is flat for all of our municipalities in Waterloo, like they're the same. And the other municipalities are a little bit different. That's why you sort of see a bit of a peak at Centre Wellington, for example. But again, you can see that we're quite a bit behind. When you look at the total tax bill, this is the same house In different municipalities, they may be assessed differently, but it's the same house, reflecting the market values, reflecting the local tax rates. So you can see, Cambridge, for example, is taxing in around $3,800 a year, and we are just shy of $3,100. And so there's, I just paint that in that picture that there's, call it room to move. I very delicately say. I'm very sensitive to the taxpayer and the financial needs of the taxpayer, and inflation hits all the taxpayers. My wife she hates local municipal treasurers that set tax rates, so I live in a house where I'm very, very aware of the sensitivity of taxes on local families. Another one here, this is turning to our infrastructure. Asset consumption ratio. This is sort of a gauge of what's the average age of your assets? How used up are they as they sit in the field? And so Wilmot is sitting just shy of 50%. It's like 47, 48% consumed. Whereas Kitchener is under 30%. So I would suggest that they've got newer assets. That may be a reflection of their rapid growth in the last 10 years. The biggest driver on this is going to be your underground infrastructure, pipes. They're long life, and so they have a dramatic impact to this. The age of your fire truck, not so much, because those are only like 10 to 15 year assets, but pipes are 80 to 100 years. So we have assets that are very well used up. We're getting there, and it tells us that we have less time to prepare financially for those assets to come due. However, assets come due every year. How do we fund those assets when we replace them? We use tax reserves. And right now, we have very little to work with, and that's our challenge. And we look at this as tax reserves per person in our community. And this is a very telling graphic. So in a conversation with my wife, and I just mentioned to you that she's a little sensitive to taxes, and I asked her how to explain to me the tax bill and how the math works on the tax bill, and she couldn't. And so we got into a little heated argument, and that's why I'm here for 2 nights now. So I just want to refresh for all of us. It's a good thing to refresh. Sometimes we think we understand it, sometimes we do understand it. But let me just walk through a couple of slides here real quick. The total tax bill is administered by the township. And we collect for ourselves, but also 2 other agencies, the school board and the region. But only the township share is controlled by this council. However, the recipient of that bill believes that you control the whole bill in many families. And that's unfortunate. So I try to emphasize this every time I have a chance. The township share, 28% last year and a proposed 29% this year, is our share of the bill that we control. So this budget, we talk about 10.6%, that's on the township share. The region has already approved 8.32 for the Township of Wilmot. The schools we anticipate is going to be 0 tax increase. The province has held the education rates flat for many, many years. So it's a fair assumption. So when we combine our 10, the region's 8.32, and the school board 0 on a proportionate basis, it comes out to 7.6. So again, let's understand that again. If the township share increased by $5, the 2 other portions had 0 increase, the total tax bill increases by $5. That's easy. But it's not the same math when you talk percentages. So here's a little table, and we'll publish this presentation tonight. The Wilmot share is going up by 10.6, adding about $120 a year to the average assessed house. The Region of Waterloo has approved 8.32. They're adding $186 to your bill. The school board, 0. And so we don't add that 10.6 and 8.32. This is where we were getting confused at the kitchen table the other night. We don't add that. We add the total dollars and divide that by last year's bill. So it's 307 divided by 4,032, gives you 7.6. So that's how the math works on the tax bill. 3 slides, I hope I explained it. I'm printing these, I'm taking them home, and hopefully I stay home for another week. What are the key drivers of that 10.6? It's really important for people to conceptually understand what are the building blocks, what's behind 10.6, how can it be that much? So if we start at the bottom, inflation was 3.1%. June to June, City of Toronto Index, published by StatsCan. You can look it up. I've got it if you want it. So the basic inflationary adjustment was 3.1%. I tasked my colleagues to stay within 3.1 on their base operating budget. And fundamentally, we were able to do that, and then a little bit more. Then we have, in the past, Wilmot Township has undertaken a 2.8% special levy for infrastructure funding. And so that's in this budget. The 2.8 also has the 3.1 base in it. So there's about $57,000 of infrastructure transfer funding down in the 3.1, and then there's another 2.8. If we don't index by inflation, we're going backwards. So we have to keep up with at least inflation. But the inflation is 3.1, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, but inflation on capital construction was actually 8.1. That's the thing that really bites hard. So let's go to the next one. Last year, we made the unfortunate decision to budget for a very temporary rental income. That rental income is no longer going to be here. Now we're actually going to occupy the building, so we have the loss of the rent plus occupancy costs of our own, 1.2% pressure. We have what we call interdepartmental charges. I do work with water customers, but my salary is paid in the tax budget. So a piece of me gets charged to water. Makes sense, the water customer pays the cost of administration. Well, when we go through all of those details, we were overcharging the cemetery, we were overcharging building, we were overcharging water. And this is not uncommon in municipalities because we start off with this concept that we're going to correctly allocate costs, but then it's very easy just to say, put another 100,000 on that, help us out. And it becomes a crutch to the operating budget. If we right-size just the building and the cemetery, it's 1% this year. I've got another 2.3 coming next year for water and wastewater. So we're phasing this in. Liability insurance and health and dental benefits. These things came in significant cost increases. Couldn't be swallowed within our 3.1, so they're sitting out here as an extra 1%. Then last year we issued levy-funded debt, but we didn't put in the debt payment costs. I wrote the check for those this year, 0.8%. Got a budget for those. And then we also knew that we were going to be losing 15% of a grant that we get from the province. We knew that was coming. Nothing we could do about it. It's 0.7. 1% of our tax levy from last year gives us $110,400. That's a number that we'll be talking about a lot at our budget meetings. 110.4 is 1%. So unfortunately, we need 10.6% to balance this budget. So I hope that people understand that there's not a lot of fluff in this budget at 10.6. In fact, we've had to really work hard to keep within that 3.1 on the operating side, and then these are the other pressures that are just building on top. Let's talk about, we're going to be having a water and wastewater utility services review as part of the engineering budget. So just help everybody understand, for the water, the region of Waterloo is responsible for water production, treatment, and trunk main maintenance and their distribution systems. And the township is responsible for local distribution and maintenance, metering, account administration, and local water quality testing. Wastewater, very similar. We call it wholesale and retail. They're in the wholesale business. They do main trunk collection, treatment, and disposal, and we are responsible for the local collection systems on the local roads, the maintenance, and the account administration. The region bills us for those volumes, and we bill our clients based on water meter volumes. When we get to our rate structure, though, we know that not all of our customers are on both water and sewer. Some are on municipal water, but on septics, and others are on both. So how do we bill? We have a dual rate structure. A volumetric rate basically is a flow-through of the regional charges. It costs us X dollars for the water, we bill the client X dollars for the water that they use. Our fixed charge captures the maintenance and operation and the infrastructure costs and all of our operating costs for the fixed charge, and that's based on the size of your water meter. The bigger your water service, probably the wider your property. Some people go to frontage charges for fixed charge. For us, it's meter size. It's a simpler way of doing it. So our fixed charge increases with the size of your water service. So we'll see on the next page here what are our rates. I've just got a couple here. So the 23 rate for water is going up by about 3.5% on the volumetric side. The fixed charge is going up by $9. However, the total change in the bill is down at the bottom, about $11 a year. Sorry, $11 a bill times 6, so about $68 a year. Your water bill will increase this year. So those are pretty conservative, particularly when it's passed through, but it's also infrastructure cost buried in that fixed charge. Now, let's talk about capital. Here's a couple of quick facts, and these are scary, but I need everybody in the room to understand this. Our average annual repair and replacement capital plan, we have a 10-year plan. Over the 10 years, we average $11.1 million just to fix stuff. Our book amortization, which is an accounting term, as a CPA, this is right up my alley. Our book amortization on historical cost of those assets is $6.25 million per year. And our 2024 reserve funding from our levy is 2.2. Federal and provincial subsidies for infrastructure, 1.75. Water, wastewater rates contribute another nearly $1 million. We're putting in just shy of $5 million. Our assets are amortizing at 6.25, but we need 11. So we got a big funding gap there. So then I look at the little box in the corner. We began issuing debt to replace stuff. And unfortunately, that's levy funded for the most part so far. In 2023, we had $14.6 million outstanding. And in the 2024 budget, we propose another 2.4. We have really, really worked hard to minimize that 2.4. But we have to do it. So our total levy debt will be $17 million when we're finished here. Let's talk about that debt for a little bit, and let's talk about the wise use of debt. We should be using debt to facilitate growth in advance of growth. New growth comes with development charges. Every house pay development charges, and that pays for the expansion of infrastructure. Well, you can't have growth if there's no pipes in the ground, so we borrow money, put the pipes in the ground, they move in, they pay us DCs, and the DCs pay the debt. That makes sense. However, let's not do it for replacing assets. Because the current user, this is the user pay system. The current user should be paying for the assets as they consume them. You drive on the road, you're slowly wrecking the road. If nobody drove on the road, it would slowly wreck itself, but we know that those that use it should be paying for it. That money should go into reserve, and then when the asset needs to be replaced, we have the reserve money to pay for it. Then the next guy, the next generation, uses the new asset, starts funding its replacement immediately into reserve, and the cycle continues. If we debt finance that replacement, now the next guy driving on the new road has to pay for the debt, but he also has to pay for the consumption of it, because you can't debt finance forever. We have limits as to how much debt we can use. So when we do that and we move into a debt financing of replacement assets, we're moving money or obligation from one generation to the next. And this is referred to as intergenerational inequity, intergenerational transfer. I've heard much worse terms. My son doesn't like the idea. So I'll leave it at that. Here's where I want to show a couple of details. On your desk tonight, because in our budget materials there was some very, very small print. You've got large print format documents for your review. This was one of the slides. So on our 10-year capital plan, you can see we've got details out there. Here's the plan by operating department. But you can see that the average total capital plan, the average is $19 million a year. Compare this to last year. Last year, the average was only 15 million. But the difference is that we have now sort of looked further down the road and populated out the later years. And more importantly, my team, my colleagues, very happy. The 24 and the 25, you can see, are significantly lower than they were forecasted to be last year. We've cut our capital budget for 2024 by 35% from last year, and another 22% for 25. This is our effort to try to push out and delay the need for money so that we can recharge some reserves, we can avoid the use of debt. And that was my call for my colleagues, and they answered the call. So I'm very happy with that. You can also see, I think my slide got cut off here, but the capital budget by type, we've got repair and replacement type projects. That's where that $11 million average came from. Our growth and new usually uses some other funding sources, but there is a repair and replacement component to some of that. We tear up the road to put a bigger pipe in it. Well, that road is R&R. It already existed, unless we widen it. But if we just dig it up, put a new pipe in and replace the road's R&R, the pipe is growth. And then studies and other initiatives. These are things that, if we left them in the operating budget, would fluctuate the tax pressures every year. A development charge study, background study. Now it's funded from DCs, but it comes up every 5 years, like clockwork. An official plan review every 5 years, like clockwork. Are they on the same years? I don't know. But either way, we don't want all of these studies fluctuating and putting adverse pressure on the tax. So I've moved these to the studies and others initiatives, and they're funded through a straight line contribution to reserve. It's part of the same reserve transfer. But these are projects that don't result in capital. They're studies, they're forecasts, they're inward-looking things, but they're necessary, and they cost money. But if I left them in the operating, it would drive you nuts with the fluctuation on tax. So this helps smooth that out. And my next 2 slides, what are the next steps? So we have a couple of budget meetings coming up. Tonight, we're simply referring this to Budget Committee. And I encourage you to dress very comfortably and casually for those meetings. They're going to be all day. We've got breakfast planned. We've got some lunch planned. So Thursday, January 25, Saturday, 27th. We're going to start with the operating on 25th. If we finish the operating early, there had been thought to move to capital, but so that the public knows what to expect when, we're going to just close off. If we're done at 11:30, we close the meeting. If we're done at 3, we close the meeting. On Saturday, we pick up and we'll start with capital. If we run out of time on Thursday, we still hard stop at 4:30 so you can make dinner plans, and we'll pick up operating on Saturday morning. So that's the plan. We have Monday, February the 5th, kind of with a pencil mark on it, but that's to be determined at the call of the chair. If we need to go in there, or if there's questions that you ask that we haven't got immediate answers for, we need to come back, we've got February 5th, and then hopefully we can hit February the 12th with an approval recommended by the Budget Committee for Council. But no pressure, but that's sort of our anticipated timeline. If it slides into March or April, there's no deadline. I just can't issue a final tax bill until I've got a budget. Then I run out of money, so. The fees and charges bylaw. In our urgency to get to tonight, the fees and charges bylaw is just being polished up. We will put that in the agenda package this Friday for next Thursday's budget meeting, and we'll start with that. And we'll be asking for a referral for recommendation for approval to the January 29 council meeting, so we can get that behind us and start charging updated rates. And similarly, the water and sewer rates will do the same thing. We'll come out of budget committee to January 29, if you guys are okay with that. Sorry, if this room is okay with that. So that's really the next steps. And as far as public participation, we encourage that, but as you can see, there's really challenging issues that are there. It's not like we have a lot of money and are trying to figure out what could we spend this money on, a new park or this or that. We shortchanged the public input process a little, but I encourage everybody to observe, participate, and we would love to hear comments and feedback from the public. If we have a budget email, budget@wilmot.ca, I encourage people to make submissions to that or through the clerk's office. Every submission that is received will be summarized and presented at the beginning of each budget meeting. For councillors and mayor, if you have a question, please use the same email. It will be filtered out. Your emails will be referred to our staff for immediate work so that we can come to the next budget meeting prepared with an answer for your comments. You ask, what about this? How much is this? What would it take to do this? We can answer those questions, we hope, but use the same email address. We'll be tracking that and then keeping you informed along the way. Does that help everybody? I look forward to an interesting and challenging budget review, working with you through this difficult process. Madam Mayor, that's the conclusion of my comments.
Thank you very much, Interim Treasurer and Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Elliott.
I'd be happy to answer it if there's a few questions. I'd be happy to take a few.
Yes, it looks like Councillor Cressman.
Yes, I would commend you on a much more readable budget presentation than I had last year. Now, granted, that was my first kick at the can, and so I think it, but it certainly hung together well. I understood where the numbers came from, etc. The one question I had, and I think it might feed into our strategic plan later, is we compare residential tax rates. What portion of our taxes come from businesses as compared to adjoining municipalities, etc.? Because it might highlight or shine a light on where our weakness is in terms of our tax base. We intuitively think we need more business, and we've taken steps to do that. But I think it would be helpful if we could have that one graph with residential and business comparators to our neighbors. That, in my mind, would help me anyways.
Excellent. Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe that I had a slide in the December the 11th presentation that spoke to the assessment mix compared to the other municipalities. So if you check that, I'll do the same. If not, I'll bring one with me. I have one. We'll see that we are rural, so we have more farm than Kitchener does. We have less commercial industrial than Kitchener does. Commercial industrial pays assessment or pays taxes at twice the rate of residential, for the most part. There's vacancies, there's all kinds of complexities, but for the most part, it's double the tax rate on non-res. And so if we had a bigger non-res rate or bigger non-res tax base, it would take a little pressure off the residential side. But you can't fix that in a heartbeat.
Very good. Councillor Martin, and then we'll go to Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sellen, and I concur with Councillor Cressman. I can't say your full title, Interim Chief Financial Officer and excellent person. I really appreciate everything that you've put out in the budget. There were 3 slides that I thought were very helpful, and I'm just curious, there was one called the tax impact slide, the capital funding facts, another slide, and the 3rd slide was the 2024 capital program summary. I was wondering either could I get a copy of that, or are they in the binder or in this package and I just couldn't immediately find them as we were going through?
The 2024 capital budget summary, the big wide one, is in your package. It's page 53.
Okay, well, that's impressive.
Sorry, page 153.
Yeah.
And, or 152. It's in there.
Yeah.
The other slides, we will be publishing this presentation either later tonight or tomorrow, and so it will be available online at your
Okay,
leisure.
thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I wanted to concur with my colleagues here. You made this very easy for someone like me to read, so I appreciate that. And I know that you were dropped in here at the last minute, and we've had staffing changes, so there was a lot of pressure on you to produce, and you produced an excellent report. I wish I liked the numbers, but I like the way they were laid out, so thank you.
Very good. And I overlooked, Donna, our manager of communications, Donna Kell, has done a tremendous legwork in making the document user-friendly. As an accountant, that's not my forte. Donna did a great job, and I appreciate her work on that.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I concur. I mean, what hasn't already been said. I'm curious. So I know that reading through the initial sort of executive summary and before digging into the extended pages, I made note that there were a few items that were sort of deferred or pushed off into next year, whether that be capital or even just general budgetary items. I'm wondering if there's a summary that could be provided in advance of the meeting on the 25th, just so we have an idea as to, what is planned on being pushed forward.
Yes, there is. And deep in the budget, I haven't got a page number handy, but there's a beautiful, bright cover section, a chapter page of Lego blocks. You'll see it. It's down, it's referred to as unfunded budget options for consideration or something along those lines. And there's some details there. And for each of those, we will be bringing in some additional material, sort of a one-pager on each of those that will help you understand that. Unfortunately, there's another few scary things in there, such as the new debt that I've carried this year. I haven't put in the carry costs. That's in that section. Perhaps another boost to infrastructure. That's in there. There's only a few things that we've deferred in there, but the water and wastewater transfer, those interdepartmental charges, that's in there. So you'll see that, and we'll bring some additional details with us on Thursday.
Any other questions or comments at this time, councillors? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Dan.
See you Thursday, casual, come early for breakfast.
Very good, thank you. And for those watching, it is also a public meeting, so we welcome you all to come join as well, whether in person or virtually. And now, as I did mention earlier, we do have one registered delegation for this item. And just a general reminder, you will be given 7 minutes to speak. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate muting or removal from the meeting, which includes interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegates, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, hate speech, or defamatory comments. With that out of the way, I will now invite Jeff Van Geisel up to address council. Thank you for joining us tonight, Jeff, and your 7 minutes will start once you're up here.
How's it going? Feel a little guilty coming here talking about a potential budget increase idea, but that was really awesome to see that. So my name is Jeff Van Geisel. I'm a local businessman. I have a construction company here in town focused on hiring newcomers and training them. And I also have a couple of homes in town here providing houses for newcomers. And so I just came here tonight to talk about GRT a little bit. Absolutely amazing that we have GRT over the last couple of years. That's pretty new for this town. and it's opened up doors for people to come to this community and be there. There's employers looking for employees, and so we really needed that. So I just wanted to speak to the challenges a little bit for the people who do use it. So over half of my tenants use the GRT buses, and a lot of them are going to Conestoga College and even have jobs in Kitchener, church in Kitchener, different things. But the bus services shut down at 6 o'clock, I believe, or 7 o'clock, and they are not open on weekends. And so a lot of Conestoga College courses nowadays are the most bizarre hours you've ever, like, they start at 8 o'clock at night, they're Sunday afternoons. And so I just kind of wanted to put it out there that it is a real challenge. We've been trying to figure out rideshare programs together as a household, but there's a lot more than just my house needing the service, obviously. You can see the bus routes, people standing there, they're being well used now. And I just want to be very invitational in our community for newcomers. There's a lot of newcomers who do not want to be in the city. They want to plant roots in a small town and have a good, safe environment for their kids to be raised. And I can tell you, I've partnered with multiple businesses in town here. Alloy Castings, NW Roofing. Bukide's husband works at a cabbage farm up the road. He's got to walk 3 kilometers every morning to get to his work, which has been pretty rough this week. But yeah, transportation is a struggle, and I'd just like to work with you guys to see what we could do to improve that. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Just before I jump into questions from councillors, I do know that we've already chatted briefly, but for those that don't know, Grand River Transit does fall under regional jurisdiction. However, it is something called area rated, so it is only Wilmot taxpayers who pay for bus 77 that comes through Wilmot. Likewise, we do not pay for the LRT or the other bus routes and transit routes in the cities that we see. So with that, it certainly does directly impact our community, both from a service level and that we are the ones paying for it. And as I said, I'm more than happy to work with you and others on bringing that forward and how we go about getting more effective transit routes out here for us. And one thing also that I want to note is that next week, actually, myself and some of our councillors are headed to Toronto for the Rural Ontario Municipality Association. Yep, I know it by its acronym ROMA conference, and there we will be delegating to multiple ministers, including a delegation that we've continued to have, which is with Minister of Transportation on getting a rural transit strategy that really better serves our community, because I've also heard New Dundee is not connected, Petersburg is not connected, or St. Agatha, and so looking at different transit options as well. So more than happy for councillors, of course, to ask questions and have input. I do just want everyone who's watching also to know this isn't going to have a direct input on the Wilmot tax budget this year. And one other great opportunity for everyone who's interested in budget and has thoughts and opinions, of course, you can always reach out to your councillors and myself, but is going to be the strategic plan. That is something that we would love to hear feedback from people on what kind of transit they want and what's going to best suit them. So just with all of that prefaced, I do want to thank you very much for coming to our council. It is an important issue that we need to get the conversation going. And councillors, do any of you have questions of Mr. Van Geisel? Okay. Oh, yes, Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, thank you, Jeff, for coming to our meeting, and I appreciate you highlighting this concern. I also appreciate, Mayor Salonen, you commenting on how this works, that it isn't something that will be a direct discussion in our budget, but it is something that we pay for. And you've also made the point, which I think needs to be highlighted, like the LRT, people in our township have said, well, here we are paying for the LRT, but what you're pointing out is we pay for bus 77 in Wilmot Township. So I think that was a very important clarification. And I'm with you, Jeff. I think we need to increase the hours. I think we need weekend hours and also to the other communities.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, councillors? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much,
Thank
Jeff,
you
for
so
joining.
much.
And we will be in touch to further discuss. So that is all that we have on this report. I will need a motion. We already have our mover and seconder. So any other questions or comments on this before we vote? Okay, seeing none, again, just to confirm for those watching, we are voting to refer this to Finance and Budget Committee for a detailed review and recommendations later to come back to council. So all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Now on to item 10.2, which is special event and facility subsidies. I do actually want to note, when I was looking at council asking if any of you had a pecuniary interest, I forgot to note mine on this topic. I am just going to ask that we remove in the affiliated group the ACEs, as I do swim in their master's program. So for that portion of conversation, we will ask Councillor Sadhu, it is your turn this week that you get to be acting mayor when needed. So I will just ask that the recommendation as we first talk through it be excluding the affiliated group of the ACES swim team, and then afterwards proceed with Councillor Sadhu doing just the ACES portion. So the recommendation is that reports CS 2024-01, special events and facility subsidies, be received for information, and further, that staff be directed to continue facility use subsidies and in-kind staff costs for legacy facility bookings by affiliated groups, in this case excluding the ACEs, and special events taking place at township facilities in 2024, and further, that staff be directed to continue fully subsidizing the Mennonite Relief Sale, Mopar Fest, and New Hamburg Fall Fair as directed per the council resolution dated March 20th, 2023. To get this on the floor, may I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman, and I will... Do we have somebody here tonight who's speaking towards this? I'm looking at you, Director Catania. I just didn't see it in my notes, so I will turn it over to you to introduce your report, Director Catania.
Thank you, Mayor Salmon. This report, provided yearly, summarizes discounted use and subsidies of township facilities and in-kind staffing contributions for 2023. The township has a strong history of supporting community groups, service clubs, sport associations, and special events in their efforts to provide social, recreation, and leisure opportunities to the community. Staff is recommending to continue with the same levels of discounted use and in-kind staff support for 2024, pending an update and the conclusion of our current community service master plan update and service delivery review. If anything comes out of that with those conclusions and there's recommended changes, staff will be bringing forward any amendments for consideration in the affiliated group policy, and happy to answer any questions council may have at this time.
Thank you very much. Questions, councillors? Okay, Councillor Wilkinson?
Yes, through the chair. I appreciate the report and the summary, and there's a number of subsidies and other items that are on this list that I think are very, very good and things that we should continue to fund. However, I'm wondering what the thoughts are for the group here and potentially propose this idea, but is this something that instead of passing this evening, we should maybe refer back to Budget Committee as well for discussion, given the sizable amount of subsidy that's there? So I would push forward to amend this, I guess, to defer to Finance and Budget Committee for conversation as well.
Just on a technical note, so we would be referring it to Finance and Budget Committee?
Yes, for further discussion.
Okay. So that is moved by Councillor Wilkinson. I would need a seconder for that, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Any discussion that council would like to have before we vote and dispense with that part? Councillor Dunstall?
Actually, I'm glad that Councillor Wilkins brought that up, and I agree there are certainly recipients there that give back to the community, but there are some that I had concerns about as well, so I appreciate you bringing that forward, and that we will get into more discussion later on. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, through the chair. In particular, I'm looking at a few items, if there's some information that would be needed to come back. When we're looking at some of the subsidies in general, I'm referring more sort of the discounts on ice, the arena floor, community centers, pools. So would be curious to see maybe further analysis and breakdown as to how this compares to our peers and other municipalities. Not that it needs to be extensive, but at least maybe a per capita amount or something along those lines, but just to sort of give us an idea as to how we compare to our peers prior to proceeding forward with this.
I guess I'm wondering don't know if it would be an amendment or if I could just ask staff for direction that in the event this does get deferred, could you just come prepared with the Canada Day? I just had a question now that we are doing that township done, if that's going to be the same type of subsidy or what the impact there is now that there's a township-run Canada Day event. I don't need an answer this second. I just want it noted that if it is going later, that is a question that is coming for you, Director Catania. Am I good to leave that with you just as a note? Okay. In that case, councillors, any other questions or comments about the referral to Finance and Budget Committee? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. So we will be seeing that next week, I believe. Very good, thank you. Now we have our bylaws, and the recommendation is that the bylaws attached to this agenda be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed in open council. And the bylaw is 11.1, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy clerk for the Corporation of the Township of Wilmot. And on that, I do just want to welcome our new deputy clerk, Miss Caitlin Boss. Is that how I pronounce your last name correctly? Good. I don't have my glasses on, and I realized I have not been introduced with your last name, just your first name. So, very good. Well, we want to welcome Caitlin on board. She's been with us for about a week and been doing really great. We're excited to have you on the team, Caitlin. And with that, may I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. We do have two notices of motion this evening, and both are from Councillor Wilkinson. So Councillor Wilkinson, I will invite you to introduce your first one, which is regarding Wilmot Township road safety, and then we'll get into your next one after.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, and to my colleagues and to the Township of Wilmot, first motion this evening is really regarding speeding, road safety. And in my opinion, of the two motions I'm bringing forward this evening, probably the more important of the two. So I'm presenting a motion, in my opinion, that is significantly important to our community's safety and well-being, designed to address growing concerns regarding road safety and the need for effective speed mitigation in our municipality. And I will say that it wasn't myself solely working on this. Councillor Sadhu did work on this with me as well. So both of us had some thoughts and input in crafting this, but unfortunately only one individual can put their name on a notice of motion. So I would say it's fair to say we've heard loud and clear from residents across the township about concerns on our roads. And this will be a long process, but one that will allow us to implement solutions across the township to ensure that they are unique to each area in each situation. And the core of this motion truly is just to instruct our Public Works Department to undertake an extensive research and development project. And the aim really there is to formulate a comprehensive road safety and speed mitigation strategy that assesses current conditions, incorporates best practices, and community input. And ultimately, the strategy will include what I hope to be a detailed cost analysis and proposed timeline for implementation of the findings and the recommendations. So additionally, recognizing the integral role of our regional roads, in our community safety network, because we do share a lot of major roads here with our region, that we want to include a clause urging collaboration with the region and calling on the region and recognizing that this partnership is vital to ensure a cohesive and effective road safety approach spanning both municipal and regional roads. And the ultimate goal here is to create safer roads for all users, residents, commuters, pedestrians, and motorists. And this is the step towards enhancing the quality of life in our community to ensure public safety. So I do look forward to a constructive discussion and support on this initiative. If you read through the motion, should I read through it? Yes?
Yes, for those that are not watching, I know it's quite lengthy.
Sure, it is lengthy. I will admit that. So, whereas the safety and well-being of our community's residents, pedestrians, and motorists are of utmost priority, and whereas there has been an increasing concern regarding road safety and vehicle speeds within the municipality, specifically in areas where significant roads feed into our communities and settlement areas, and whereas the jurisdiction of certain roads within our municipality falls under the responsibility of the Region of Waterloo, and whereas road safety and speed mitigation are concerns that extend beyond municipal boundaries and require a coordinated approach between different levels of government. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to report back to council during the 2024 capital budget deliberations on undertaking a study to develop a road safety and speed mitigation strategy with the goal of enhancing the safety of all road users in our community, considering both residential and commercial areas. Be it further resolved that the scope of such road safety and speed mitigation strategy should include, but not be limited to, the following elements: assessment of current road safety conditions in high-risk areas, review of best practices in speed mitigation and road safety measures, consultation with local law enforcement, community groups, and other stakeholders, consultation with upper-tier municipal government, development of a range of effective speed mitigation options, including speed bumps, and cost analysis of proposed measures. Be it further resolved that staff are requested to provide to council for consideration a detailed report outlining the research findings and proposed strategies, an estimated timeline for the implementation of these strategies, and a comprehensive cost analysis for the execution of the proposed measures. Be it finally resolved that council requests the Region of Waterloo to actively engage with the Township of Wilmot staff to address road safety and speed mitigation concerns on regional roads within the Township of Wilmot, including sharing of research, data, and best practices related to road safety and speed mitigation, joint development of strategies that are consistent and effective across both municipal and regional roads, coordination in the implementation of road safety measures to ensure a cohesive approach, and exploration of funding opportunities and resources that may be available through regional or provincial programs. That's all.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Councillor. So I would need a seconder to this. Seconded by Councillor Sadhu. And questions or comments? Councillor Cressman.
Yes, as I reviewed this motion, I guess my view is it's, who would vote against it? It's a bit of a motherhood. I guess the question that I had is, the first, be it resolved, is the timeline for answers during the 2024 capital budget deliberations, which are 10 days away. So through you, Mayor, I would ask Director Mullenhouse, is this practical to have answers to the extent that's requested in this motion in that time frame?
Through you, Mayor, reading through the motion, I guess what we see is reporting back on what sort of budgetary impacts from a study perspective and timelines and whatnot. So we see that as a reasonable time frame to report back on those types of things, and certainly not to have a full study done, but to at least give you some budgetary impacts there to include that in this year's budget.
Any other question, Councillor Sadhu?
Just a general comment. I want to thank my colleague, Councillor Wilkinson, for bringing me on board and working together on this. Going door to door and talking with constituents, this is one of the top priorities of our residents. I have 3 schools in my ward, and I've talked to crosswalkers and I've talked to residents. Speeding is an issue. speed mitigation is an issue. And I look forward to working with the region through this report and get a comprehensive plan where we can work together and help mitigate certain areas of our township that are regional roads, that are dangerous, that have concerns, and effectively just working together to put a plan in place so we have a roadmap moving forward that we can abide by and help tackle this issue.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Cressman.
Yes, just as a follow-up, the one that in my ward that gets the most, I get the most correspondence and input about is Trustler Road and the volume of traffic on Trustler Road and the number of subdivisions that are coming online. And if you live in Manheim, how do you get on Trustler Road? And it's only going to be worse in the future as these homes east of Trustler Road, and I know I wrote to the traffic commissioner of the region, and he said, well, we're doing our engineering studies and we'll have public engagement in a year's time. Somehow I think we're behind the 8 ball on that one. The public engagement should have been ahead because the homes are being built and occupied and the traffic is there. So I know from farm equipment point of view, there's just days, or there are times of the day that I will stay off Trustler Road because it's just not practical. And people are taking alternate routes to get to the expressway because of the traffic volume that's on Trustler Road. So I think certainly the volume component as well is a piece that we have to be able to get behind the curtain of the region on some of these roads to understand what the long-term planning is. Somehow, maybe Director Mullenhouse sees it, but as a councillor and as constituents, we don't see what the long-term plan is for the road network, and all we have to do is live with the congestion that's there. So that's me venting a bit, but.
I feel that may have been a bit rhetorical as you were, I believe, mainly referring to regional road routes, but I most certainly do agree with you. And I know I've been told that Trustler Road is going to be redone, but much like you, I agree it's behind the 8 ball, as well as I don't quite understand how it's reflected in the 10-year capital. I'm not seeing the cost outweigh there. But any other questions or comments, councillors, before we vote on this? Okay, seeing none, I will now call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. I did slightly, I'm starting to learn if I don't have it written down, I'm forgetting it in my chair notes. We do need to just make one slight rewind back to the special events and facility subsidies for Councillor Sadhu to step in his chair and vote on the ACEs. Otherwise, that's just sitting in the abyss, not moved on to Finance and Budget Committee. So I will turn it over to you, Councillor Sadhu, to chair that part. I can give you the wording, though, that it would just be, you're talking about the motion recommendation now including the ACEs, and you can decide, I guess, as chair as to if it would, asking someone if they want to refer it to Finance and Budget, but sure. I will step out of the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just ask if someone can raise the motion to also refer to budget. Can I get a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wilkinson, and can I get a vote on that? All in favor?
What a great job. Do you want to do the rest of the meeting? Thank you very much, Councillor Sadhu. Now we will go back to Councillor Wilkinson for your second motion. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. So I will start this time by reading the recommendation and then expand on some comments. So I've put forward a notice of motion this evening regarding the Prime Minister's Path statues and the next steps. And whereas in 2020, the Township of Wilmot retained the First Peoples Group to assist the township with a consultation process on the future of the Prime Minister's Path statues, and Whereas on July 5th, 2021, Wilmot Council received report CAO-2021-03, presentation of findings and recommendations, First Peoples Group, Prime Minister's Path, Community Engagement, recommending that the report from First Peoples Group dated June 30th, 2021 be endorsed, that staff arrange for the immediate removal and temporary storage of 4 remaining statues on the Prime Minister's Path and discontinue any further expansion or investment in the Prime Minister's Path as it exists today. That staff work with the Township Solicitor to activate the termination clause in the agreement with CreateScape, and further that staff be directed to report back to Council with an implementation plan for the incorporation of the remaining recommendations from First Peoples Group, including A, creating a working group comprised of balanced representation of the individuals and communities within Wilmot Township to discuss, develop, and suggest plans for the implementation of next steps centered in community cohesion and healing, and B, committee to transforming community engagement and consultation processes in Wilmot Township in a way that encourages greater openness, accountability, and citizen participation in decision-making, and further. Now, whereas on July 5th, 2021, Wilmot Council voted in favor of the recommendation contained in report CAO-2021-03 and temporarily remove and store the Prime Minister's Path statues, therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to report back to Council at the February 12th, 2024 regular Council meeting on any interim actions taken since the statues were placed in storage, and therefore be it finally resolved that staff be directed to prepare options on ways to proceed with a permanent plan for the Prime Minister's Path statues, including information relating to a potential referendum for Council's consideration at the February 12th, 2024 regular Council meeting. So, when I was campaigning, I would say that, and first off, thank you to Interim Director Jeff Bunn for helping me craft this. I know there was some research and other pieces in there that you took on, so thank you. When I was campaigning, I would have to say that this was probably the #1 issue at the door. I think it's fair to say that our citizens desire resolution and want their opportunity to have their voice heard. And this motion is designed to reopen and restart that conversation. And I'd like to be very clear. This evening, we are not discussing the resolution or the process in which we will achieve resolution. I think ultimately the goal, at least in my opinion, is that we want this township to heal and come to a resolution that's agreeable. So the spirit of this is that I'm asking for information and options on how we can move forward. Once we have that information, I want to hear from citizens on how they think we should move forward. I want to hear about what they think of the options that will be presented to us. Personally, I think there's an opportunity here for a combination of facilitated community meetings in addition to potentially facilitating a referendum. I don't know that that is the right option for everybody, but is one that I personally feel strongly about. So I'm not suggesting within this motion by any means that we are going to do those exact items. I simply am asking for the information and encouraging us to move forward and start this conversation again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I have to say that along with you.
Excuse me, I have a
point of order.
question about process. I thought a motion
It needs to be
being-
seconded, yes. You are very correct. Thank you very much, Councillor Martin. Sorry, may I please have a seconder for, thank you, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Now you may speak, Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Martin. I appreciate that. I just wanted to say that during my time canvassing, it became evident that a large number of New Hamburg residents were not happy with the way that the Prime Minister's Path was handled. And actually, this issue took center stage in every single conversation that I had at the door with the constituents. And as a matter of fact, my campaign slogan of "Your Voice, Your Choice" was inspired by the numerous constituents expressing their frustration with feeling unheard, or worse yet, having their voices totally dismissed. They felt totally excluded from the decision-making process. So I look forward to receiving options on ways to proceed with a permanent plan for the statues that engages a complete cross-section of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunstall. Councillor Cressman.
I would agree this is one of the motions that I guess being elected, I knew we were going to be faced at some point in time. I thought it would be like ripping a Band-Aid off or picking the scab of something that has had some healing associated with it. I think what we have to be careful in is that we establish a process, a facilitated process, that allows people's voices to be heard in a respectful manner, that we are listeners as well as speakers to the issues, that we have the opportunity. I think Abraham Lincoln said that the kinder angels of our human nature be expressed, and that this issue that could be a divisive issue for the residents of Wilmot, we can be an example of how we bridge the gulf that's between people on this issue, so that we can be seen as an example of how you handle issues that would tend to tear apart communities. So that's my wish, and if I could say my prayer for our community, is that we would move forward in a respectful manner, and at the end of the day, we would be able to achieve some healing on this matter, and that we would have respect on both sides on this issue.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressman. As a complete side note, one day I hope to have references cataloged like yours that range from Yogi Bear to Abraham Lincoln. I find it very impressive. Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, and I agree, I have to defer to Councillor Cressman's references. Can't bring those up. Councillor Wilkinson made the comment that tonight is not the night to discuss the process that we will use. At the same time, I heard you, Councillor Wilkinson, express your personal opinion that a referendum may be a good way to go. My personal opinion is that a referendum would further create a divide rather than help to bring the community together. I pulled together a number of articles that show that referendums can create further divisiveness, further polarization, as opposed to bringing people together. I mean, I could quote the references. Also received an email today from a member in the community who sent me some references along the same topic, that a referendum could be problematic. And so I appreciate that tonight may not be the night to discuss the method that we're going to use, but if we're giving direction to staff and recommending that we talk about a referendum as a good way to go, then that's where I struggle. And so I'm just wondering, are there other possibilities? Could we ask staff to come back with information? There is that recommendation from the First Peoples Group to have a working group. So could we move forward on that recommendation of having a working group and not necessarily the referendum? I'm also wondering about the timeline. I know we've had this issue that's sitting with us for over a year. We've been elected for over a year now. At the same time, we're dealing with difficult budget discussions. Is February 12th reasonable? Would February 26th be more reasonable? I don't know. So those would be some of my concerns.
I will quickly turn it over to CAO Chambers because some of those are more technical nature in terms of timelines, and then I will give Councillor Wilkinson a moment to chat.
Of course, we will work to do as council directs. We will be away at Roma next week, and we do have a couple of very busy budget meetings upcoming, so the extra couple of weeks would be appreciated. However, I will do as council directs. Just noting that the report coming forward will be, not detailed plans, but more high-level discussion.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, through the chair. And Councillor Cressman, I certainly appreciate, or pardon me, Councillor Martin, sorry. I appreciate your concerns, and I know that that is a topic that's come up, and I have heard some of the same opinions. And I'm not, again, I'm simply making sure that that is noted because that is of particular interest to me in terms of information I'd like to see. I would suggest that, you know, the more information and the more options we have at our disposal, the better. Again, and you're correct, I did share my opinion on this, but I wanted to make sure that that was noted in particular because that's of interest to myself. I would certainly welcome an amendment if there was another piece there that you wanted to make sure was back on a report, and certainly include that as well.
Councilor Martin?
So then I would make a motion that we change the date to February 26th instead of February 12th. And yes, I won't make any comment then on the referendum. This is for information gathering, how we can move forward, and just giving more time for that.
Just before I go to Councillor Cressman, I do just have one comment. In terms of, and I know that you didn't make mention to put it in as an amendment, Councillor Martin, but your point about doing the working group and what First Peoples Group suggested, although none of us sitting around the horseshoe were there, technically speaking, that's still what's on the docket because that is what council as a body approved as the process forward, so it wouldn't need to be brought forward and means that we ask staff to look into it further. I would assume that the report would include the information because that is currently what staff have as direction from council. If we as a council chose a different process at some point in time, we would have to go through, my understanding is essentially undoing that council vote, because even though none of us were in that vote, it is the body of council, not any of the individuals that make the whole. So I did just want to note that, and I know that you're aware of that. I also wanted to note it for the people who are watching. And one thing I would just want to note, I don't know, because there will be budget impacts, if that would be a problem not to have it completely outside of the budget process. I am not certain, but staff can think about that while I go to Councillor Cressman.
I was looking at seconding the motion to have the date changed from the 12th to the 26th. So that was my initial, just to keep this in line with Robert's rules or the Municipal Act for our clerk. The second thing is, further to that, now that it's seconded, I would say I read with interest one of the letters that came in from Mr. Wolf. I know there are some people that, you know, aren't necessarily fans, but I thought it really went along with my thinking and went along with what you just stated about this action of the previous council is still in place. And he talked about, in detail, about process. And I think it's the process that is going to provide us the answer, and it's the ability to bridge the gulf is the process that is respectful, etc. So I'd just like to highlight that as a worthwhile piece of information to take in. And I'm not saying you do everything he suggests, but I am saying he's got a lot of sound information in there that I think would be extremely helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Cressman. I am just going to bounce back to CAO Chambers, and then we'll go to you, Councillor Martin.
Yes, through you, Mayor, in regards to the budget discussion, it is a carryover project for 2023, so there are funds remaining. However, we would have to assess whether there would be sufficient funds to move forward with any additional options that Council considered, and so that would have to be dealt with through the budget process. Although we could put a placeholder there, I'd like to have some discussion internally as to how we may fund additional costs, if any.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen. Thank you, Councillor Cressman, for your comments, and I agree with you regarding the concerns about process. I'm not aware of any working group that has started, and so I don't know if council needs to give direction in terms of getting the working group started. And that's why I made the comments that I did, because I personally think that would be a good way to go, is just to have the working group going for a while. But I'm not aware of that happening.
So you're correct, that has not happened. I might ask CAO Chambers to explain, because I know there was a bit of a decision, and I don't know how much of it was formal versus decision because it was an election time, as to where that balance, I guess, hangs in the balance with the direction given to staff and what has been done.
I would suggest that these are procedural matters that we would address through the report coming back, as to what would be required if council chose a different direction than was previously enacted by the council. So if there is a motion on the books giving council or giving staff direction, that remains, and it would need to be brought back for reconsideration should council choose a different direction. But we'll discuss those in detail within the report.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Sadhu?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I know this is a sensitive topic. There's no perfect solution in my mind. As far as, like with anything I do, I want to have options, whether that be a referendum or a working group or other scenarios. My personal opinion aside, I want to have as much communication with the residents as possible, just to hear what they want, whether they are for, whether they're against, how they're feeling about it. So that's why, for me, if I can get a report back with some more options, just to have an idea of how we navigate forward. I might think one thing one way now, but after hearing from residents, I could change my opinion and we could chart course a different way. So I want to say there's no perfect way to do this. Let's leave our minds open and be open to the possibilities.
So just for clarification, Councillor Martin, are you wanting, and then Councillor Cressman to second, moving an amendment to move it to the 26th? Correct? Okay, and you're seconding that, Councillor Cressman? So we will vote on that part first. All those in favor to moving the report date to the 26th? And all those opposed? And that carries. And then we will vote on the, right, my apologies. I keep on forgetting, we do have a delegation for this who has joined us on the phone. And I will now invite Glenn Mathers to address council on this matter. Glenn, you will have 7 minutes once you confirm that you can hear us and that we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Glenn. Thank you for joining us, and you're good to go ahead.
I'm speaking on behalf of CreateScape, and CreateScape is prepared to move forward with this project. The Prime Minister's path is important. And that's all I have to say. Done.
Okay, thank you very much, Glenn. Councillors, any...
7 minutes.
I know, that was very impressive.
Seconds,
any questions for Glenn, councillors? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Glenn, for bringing this information on behalf of CreateScape. That will be added to the information for council to consider as these conversations continue. We appreciate you joining us this evening.
Thank you.
And now that we have heard from Glenn, any final comments or questions, councillors? All right, seeing none, I will now call the vote on the motion as amended for the 26th reporting back date. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we do have, I know Councillor Martin, you were hoping to raise a motion which will require waiving notice of motion. That does require 2/3 support of the members. And it is not debatable, actually, but because it's not debatable and I do not believe my colleagues are aware what you want to bring, I will allow you a few moments to introduce what it is you want to talk about so that we can decide if we would like to proceed with waiving notice.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Salonen. So then, do I understand correctly, you're not asking me to read the motion, you're asking me to talk about the motion?
I will leave that up to you as to what part you want to do. I just know our colleagues have not been introduced to the concept, so before they're asked to waive notice on something they don't know about.
Yes, okay, fair point, thank you. So I think my motion is clear, so I'll just read the motion, and I think that gives the, it's already on the board there. Very good, that's very impressive. Thank you, Interim Director Bunn. So then, whereas the Government of Canada has released its electric vehicle sales mandate regulations, encouraging the increased production and sales of electronic vehicles, and whereas the Province of Ontario is currently seeking applications for its electronic vehicle or EV charge on program by January 31st, 2024, there be it resolved that staff be asked to include 2 level 3 chargers for the Township of Wilmot in the New Hamburg and Baden areas in the draft 2024 capital budget at an estimated cost of $50,000 each. And further, that it finally be resolved that if recommended by the Budget and Finance Committee on January 27th, 2024, that staff be directed to apply to the electronic vehicle EV charge-on program for provincial funding.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So this is what Councillor Martin is hoping to bring forward. There is, my understanding is part of bringing it forward tonight is because of the timeline of this application process for us to get the 75% grant from the federal government. It does close at the end of January. So I will call the vote. Do I need a mover and seconder for this? To waive notice. So we're waiving notice is what the vote's going to be on. So it's been moved by Councillor Martin. May I have a seconder for waiving notice? Seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. So now, Councillor Martin, you have introduced your motion. Did you have any additional comments that you would like to add?
I don't think much. I appreciate you talking about the 75%. So the cost to the township would be $50,000 each if we would go with 2 chargers. For clarification, sometimes people ask me because I do have an electric car, but this wouldn't benefit me. I'm not looking to charge my car. I do it at home. I see the benefits of a level 3 charger. A level 3 charger for the average electric car will charge in an hour if the battery is empty, whereas a level 2 charger, which we currently have chargers at the Wilmot Rec Center. We have chargers in New Hamburg at the dam on Wilmot Street. We have chargers behind us here in the parking lot. So we've got 3 locations with level 2. If a battery is empty, it's going to take 7 to 8 hours with a level 2 charger to charge the battery. So we already have those level 2 for people who are coming to the township office for a meeting for a number of hours. If they're going to stay overnight in New Hamburg, they can charge overnight. But the benefit of a level 3 charger, I would see it from a business standpoint, and that is we have apps on our phone. So if I'm going up to Tobermory, I will stop in Clifford for a charge because I know that my app tells me there's a level 3 charger in Clifford. And I can stop there for a half an hour, I can grab a coffee and have the charge that I need for where I'm going. I can stop in Arthur if I'm going up to Collingwood. And so there are locations that our apps tell us as to where we can stop. Somebody traveling through the area, maybe from Kitchener to Stratford, maybe going to Grand Bend, maybe going in a different direction. If there was a level 3 charger in New Hamburg or Baden, they'd be tempted to stop for lunch. They'd be tempted to stop and go into the stores while their car is charging, just like you fill up for gas if you have an internal combustion engine. And so this is the direction that our country is going. I think with this provincial grant, the timing is good. They will pay up to 75% of the cost. And so there is a cost to us. We would get some revenue back. I'm not talking huge revenues, but there would be some revenue in the sense that we already get some money for the level 2 charging. There would be level 3 charging revenue from those level 3 chargers. And so I would like to have us consider it in the budget deliberations because this grant is here and the deadline is January 31st.
Just before I move to questions, do I have a seconder for this motion? Seconded by Councillor Sadhu. Councillor Cressman, I saw that you had a question.
Yes, are these fast chargers or whatever the level 3 chargers usually located on public or private? Just give me a sense since
It's both. So Canadian Tire, for example, as a store, will have level 3 chargers. The en route on the 401 has chargers. But there are municipal places across Ontario, like I mentioned, Arthur and Clifford. Stainer is another one. So there are places municipally that they have the level 3. There are private businesses that have level 3. So it's both.
Councillor Cressman.
Just to follow up, is the grant specific to municipalities? Would it have to be on municipal property, or could it be the 50,000 could be cost shared with a private, locating on private property, and there'd be a cost share on that?
Yeah, it's a good question, Councillor Cressman, through you, Mayor Sallin, and I don't know, Director Catania, do you know the answer to that?
Through you, Mayor Sallin, to Councillor Martin, from a municipal perspective, it'd be 75% up to a maximum of $75,000. If it is, there is some funding available, I believe, in the private sector too, but their funding is a little bit less. So to basically answer your question, it would be more beneficial on public lands.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just want to make sure I understand that what we're voting on is to add this to the discussion of our budget, not to approve spending money when we're already in trouble. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that, correct? Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mayor Sallin, and that's the intention of my motion. I had already talked to Director Catania, but we can't ask staff to put forward an application without direction from council. And so in order to, and I'm also aware that if we do approve it by January 27th, it doesn't leave much time to fill out an application, which some of these applications are very extensive. And so I'm just trying to give staff notice that there could be some preparation work, maybe part of the application filled out if we would go ahead with approving it. At least then we have time to get it in by January 31st.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, to whoever would be bringing this report back, could we see some analysis and maybe long-term forecasting on what the revenue generation of these chargers are, just so we can take that into account when looking at the budget?
Through you, Mayor Sallin, to Councillor Wilkinson, what staff will be doing is preparing a capital sheet to be added for the discussions on January the 27th, on that Saturday. And part of that capital justification sheet will look at some cost recovery that'll come with the potential of having these chargers.
Any other questions at this time, councillors? Okay, seeing none. Yes, so this, as mentioned, will be for us to bring into our finance and budget deliberations. So I will now call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. That is the end of our motions. We do have some announcements. There was a snow event this past weekend, in case you were hiding in your house and still are. But we just wanted to note that the weekend brought some extreme weather with blowing and drifting snow, which made it difficult and at times treacherous to travel. And I wanted to thank the township's roads crew response for the winter weather and keeping our streets and public spaces safe. Thank you also to the community for being flexible on parking your vehicles off the road to allow for plow operators to do their job, and to those who are clearing the snow from their sidewalks and hydrants. Castle Kilbride, I just wanted to make note that They wrapped up another great season, and the Christmas at the Castle attracted about 100 to 150 people a day in December is what they were averaging on days they were open, so that's really fantastic. And if you missed it, or if you want to relive your experience walking through the castle, please be sure to check out the castle's Facebook page for photos and details. The Ninth River Promenade project. So earlier on our consent agenda, we did pass the finalization of this project, and I'm sure those who have driven by have noticed that finally all of the barricades have come down. It's obviously a bit hard to see now with the snow, and winter maintenance is not maintained on that path. However, it's very exciting that we have seen the end of this project, and come the spring we will be having some final touches put in place, and we will be doing an official opening event. So very much looking forward to that, and just a big thank you to our community services team who led on the project, and of course thank you to our federal and provincial funding partners for their contributions through the Canada Community Revitalization Fund and the Rural Economic Development Grant. Speaking of our provincial partners, I did mention to one of our delegates, but some of us are headed off to the Rural Ontario Municipal Association's conference. This Sunday we head out, and we'll be there until Wednesday. All councillors, except for Councillor Wilkinson, who unfortunately has his day job to be stuck at, which we understand. But the rest of us will be having meetings with many of our provincial counterparts, including ministers, and continuing to advocate for various agendas that we're hoping that they can help us achieve. And also noting the province, I wanted to just give a general update that on Thursday, the Provincial Standing Committee on Heritage, Infrastructure and Cultural Policy is coming to Kitchener for a discussion on regional Waterloo review. Some of you may have been following since Bill 23 discussions. There was going to be a facilitator coming to the region. That has since changed to a referral to this committee. So that will be a full day of public hearings, which I will be speaking at, as well as many of the other mayors. I believe actually all the other mayors throughout the region will be at as well. So that is something that you can all look forward to seeing the news cycles, or of course there is information on the provincial website should you be interested on how to attend the committee to listen in. And those are all of my announcements, but councillors, does anybody else have announcements they'd like to mention? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, on February the 17th, we have Heritage Day at the New Dundee Community Centre. And so I just wanted to put the date out there. We're from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There will be food there that people can buy. My understanding is the New Dundee Women's Institute is providing the food for purchase. And then we'll have different displays from different groups looking at the heritage in our township.
Very good, thank you. Any other announcements tonight, councillors? Okay. Seeing none, the recommendation is for our confirmatory bylaw as attached to this agenda be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed in open council. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. And lastly, adjournment. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And thank you for joining.